All right, week 10 of the college football season is here. Kicks off tonight on this Tuesday. Couple of games on tap we're going to break down for you. We do have a few best bets on this week 10 slate we're going to get to, and we'll do it with three of the best at WagerTalk.com. The college football elite here with us today as Brian Power in the house, Adam Trigger, and Double R1L Steve Merrill. It also happens to be a $2 customer appreciation day, which means best bets across the board for all three of these gentlemen and everyone else at Wager Talk. Just $2, guys. Doesn't get any better than that. So head over there and visit these guys at wagertalk.com as we kick it off with BP here, who's going to talk about a game kicking off tonight on this Tuesday, BP, and Buffalo taking on Toledo. A little revenge for Toledo in this matchup tonight. But what do you think? Buffalo can keep it within the number, or is the total the way you're looking at here tonight?
Well, let's just catch everybody up who hasn't been following the MAC maybe so far this year. Toledo came into the year as the consensus favorite to win the conference. Sure enough, they are 4-0 in MAC play. They've won 7 in a row overall since a season-opening loss at Illinois. That game decided on a last-second field goal. The Rockets very much could have won that one and thus would be undefeated, but alas, they've got the one loss. But while they're winning games, Joe, the Rockets have not been dominant during this win streak. 4 of the victories by 7 points or less, 3 of those coming in conference play. They're also just 2-5 against the number as a favorite this season. So I would not want any part of laying points with Jason Candle's team right now. Historically speaking, the thing is Toledo has been prone to at least one upset every season. That hasn't happened this year. So I would tread lightly with the Rockets. But I'm not confident, really, that tonight's opponent, Buffalo, is the team to spring the outright upset. Now, if you're looking to bet the side, taking the points, probably the way to go here. Believe it or not, as you alluded to, Buffalo's beaten Toledo 3 straight times going back to 2018. That includes a 34-27 upset last year as 7.5-point home underdogs. And you know Buffalo's going to be motivated because they already have 5 losses. And they're looking, bowl eligibility, if not the MAC East. They are still in play in the MAC East, Buffalo. So you're going to get an inspired effort here as MACtion begins. But my one concern with Buffalo is an offense that lacks explosiveness. Quarterback Snyder, he's got a poor completion percentage despite being in the bottom 25 in the FBS in yards per pass attempt. He's only averaging 7.5 yards per pass attempt. Low number there. This offense also has just 5 runs of 15 yards or more all season out of its top 2 running backs. That's not good. And the Bulls struggled to beat Akron 13-10, 256 yards of total offense in that game. Total yardage was basically even in a somewhat misleading 37-13 win against Central Michigan. Bulls had 2 pick sixes in that game. So I'm going to look at the total here. This is a client play that I gave out at 51. I like the under. That's the way Buffalo's last 4 games have gone. It's the way Toledo's last 2 games have gone. I mentioned the lack of explosiveness for the Buffalo offense. Well, turning to Toledo's offense, quarterback Finn, running back Boone, both very good. However, so's a Buffalo secondary, Joe, that has allowed just 7 passes of 30 or more yards this season. I think this shapes up to be a lower scoring game than expected, with the underdog probably the right side if you're looking to play it. But I am on the under. This is a client play. Gave it out at 51. It's down to 50. So maybe you want to play it a little bit less than if you were able to get it at 51. But under is the way I would go.
Under it is. Feels like there could be a whole lot of running in this game, I'm thinking. So under, not a bad way to look here. As before we get to Adam Trigger to talk about another MACtion game tomorrow night, we do want to remind you guys, if you're new to Wager Talk TV, by hitting the subscribe button, hitting the thumbs up. If you like college football content or NBA content or soon-to-be college basketball content, NHL, NFL, you're getting the picture. Nobody has more of it than we do. Game previews each and every day during the week. Best bets across the slate of games around the sports world. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Become part of the Wager Talk TV family. And Trig, MACtion on a Wednesday night, however. And for a minute, I thought this was a college basketball game you were breaking down. But nope, it's still football season with Kent State and Akron. So What are we seeing? I'm still seeing 4 here for Akron at home. They're laying it against Kent State. What are we doing with it?
Well, Joe, I wish it was a basketball game because this rivalry is as good as it gets on the hardwood. BP and I got to go see it in person last year. It was awesome. This was going to be my best bet for the show, but they're interchangeable at this point. So we'll make this the big game breakdown. This is Wednesday night, and it's the wagon wheel rivalry, which is what they call it on the gridiron. So Kent State, Akron, big rivalry in terms of, they're very close, maybe 20 minutes from each other, 20, 30 minutes from each other. They're the regional rivals in this conference. And what else they have in common this year is both teams are 1-7. Both teams have yet to beat an FBS opponent. It's been a rough year for the Zips. It's been a rough year for the Golden Flashes, but I don't think these 1-7 teams are equal in anything other than their record. Akron's been really unlucky. Okay. This was a team, I had really high hopes for the Zips this year. I played their season win total over, thinking they'd be peaking around this time. But unfortunately, DJ Irons went down with an injury after the Buffalo game, and Akron just hasn't really been right since. Now, go back to the beginning of the year. Another way they've been unlucky to not get a win is just losing close games. The Temple game, they led. They were a double-digit dog in that game, lose by 3. Indiana was the crushing one. Big underdog in that game. And the Zips take them, I think, 3 or 4 overtimes before eventually losing the game by 2 in a game they absolutely, in my opinion, could have won. Maybe should have won. And then the Buffalo game that Brian referenced in his breakdown, tough 3-point loss for the Zips right there. When I look at these two teams, I see an Akron team that's got far more talent on their roster. Kent State, big turnover in the offseason. They lose their head coach to Prime, Coach Prime in Colorado, and they had to entirely rebuild. Probably the most turnover of any roster in FBS this year. And even without Irons, I looked at the last 3 weeks since the Irons injury, and I feel like Akron's sort of, the way they've played the last 3 weeks is explainable in my opinion. Of course, I'll throw the Northern Illinois game out completely. They had their 3rd string quarterback in that game, and it was unexpected, of course, that Irons was just going to be done for, an extended period of time. He got hurt in the Buffalo game, I believe toward the end of the Buffalo game. They've had Jeff Undercuffler back the last couple of weeks, which he's not great, but in this conference, he's not horrible. He's not incapable. And, couple tough road games though, against teams that are improving. Central Michigan's been playing better, and Bowling Green's been playing better. They knocked off Georgia Tech a couple weeks ago. So Akron having to go on the road there, that was a challenge. That was a tough task, in my opinion. But now they get some time off. They have like the bye week that gives them about 10 days to prepare for this game. And I think with that extra time, Undercuffler is not awful. I do think Akron's going to be able to sort of, right the ship in that regard here. And of course, playing at home will help as well. Kent State has been absolutely horrific on the road. They've been really bad overall, but the road has been even worse. And the Akron defense actually has some players and, is going to get some stops here. I can't say much good about Kent State on either side of the ball. So I actually would have made this more like closer to a touchdown favorite. I think you're getting a bargain with Akron, even though, I know it's tough to lay points with a 1-7 team. But the Zips seem to be the right side here. I like Akron minus 3.5.
All right. Akron, it is for Trig here. That's coming up tomorrow. And Steve Merrill, he's got himself a game tonight. The other half of the doubleheader tonight with Northern Illinois at Central Michigan. What are you thinking about this one here, Merrill? I think 6 is what I'm seeing now for Northern Illinois.
Yeah, and I had to do one of the Tuesday night games just so I could shamelessly show my Halloween costume since it's Tuesday, October the 31st. So we got the scary hockey mask for all the Canadian Halloween trick-or-treaters, and then we got the American baseball shirt, scary ghost baseball ghost for the Americans. And then never let your 5-year-old nephew, Mick Merrill, think it's a real hockey stick and come into your office because it ruins the props. So I would have had even more for you, but that's what happens. So we're going to work with what we got. But yeah, Tuesday night Halloween action. It is $2 Tuesday as well. I've got a strong NBA best bet tonight. Don't forget, NBA tip-off show is on this channel as well for Tuesday. Got some player props, not just college Halloween props here. We got player props in the NBA show as well. But this is an interesting game because we saw a pretty substantial line move from the opener of 3 up to 6 very quickly this week. Obviously, the lines come out Sunday and Monday. This is Tuesday. But I agree with that move. In fact, my 10,000 game database simulation has, on average, Northern Illinois winning by 6.7, so almost 7 points. So I do still think there's some line value with the road favorite. And even though these are both 4-4 teams, Northern Illinois is a much better squad on both sides of the ball. They've been very average offensively this year, just 5.4 yards per play against teams that allow 5.4. But Central Michigan just 4.9 yards per play, and they've struggled to throw the ball and run the ball. Northern Illinois has been pretty mediocre throwing, but they do run the ball well, and I think they match up well with that rushing attack here against a Central Michigan rush D that's given up 4.6 yards per carry against weak opponents that average just 3.9. So Northern Illinois should win the battle on the line of scrimmage. Battle of 4-4 teams in general. This is a very important game because you have to get bowl eligible, try to get to that 6th win. So whoever loses this game is going to be kind of on the outside looking in at 4-5. So Northern Illinois will be fully focused, and I'm not sure home field's worth much, even this being a national TV game on Tuesday night. I think people will be out trick-or-treating instead. I like Northern Illinois here. We did see a little bit of a drop on the total as well, from the opener of 47 down to 46, 46.5. I'd agree with that move as well. As I mentioned, both teams have struggled to throw the ball this year. They're both more run-based offenses. So I lean under, but I think Northern Illinois still has some value at -6 or less as well.
All right, Northern Illinois, it is. There's 3 big game breakdowns for you, 3 best bets coming up here in just a second. And if you happen to have any questions about these games or any of the games coming up in this Week 10 slate, drop them in the comments section. As Brian Power, yes, don't let him fool you, he can read. Adam Trigger and Steve Merrill will keep an eye on the comment section all week long, giving you guys any of the answers you may request here on these games coming up as we get ready to head back to Brian Power so he can go ahead and read off his best bet in this Week 10 slate. BP, where you going here in this week?
Yeah, well, I know our viewers could certainly read, and they saw that $2 graphic. I was on there. I do have a NFL best bet that you can get today, just $2, obviously, before Sunday. Price is going to go up, so I would get it now. And you talk about best bets. Let's go back to Saturday. I had Kansas plus the points against Oklahoma. Sometimes, Joe, you just have a pretty good feeling about a bet, given the way that line had moved in the morning and the early defensive touchdown for the Jayhawks. Pretty sweat-free, even with the weather delay. However, now this is letdown city for Kansas. Off their biggest win in ages, they have to go on the road to face an Iowa State team that all of a sudden has won 3 straight games by double digits, the last 2 coming on the road. And you look at the WagerTalk.com odds screen, we've seen the Cyclones already take some early money. They're up to -2.5 most places. Circa even has a -3. I'm not sure I'd want to lay more than a field goal in this game, although it's worth mentioning Kansas's defense has given up 33 or more points in 3 of its last 4 games. The one exception against UCF, who was playing without starting quarterback John Reese Plumlee. But the Iowa State offense, much improved in conference play. They've scored between 27 and 34 each of the last 4 wins. They should have had more than 30 against Baylor last week. There were some open throws missed, but they'll take the win and cover there. And something absolutely worth noting with the Cyclones, guys, they're now in a 5-way tie for the conference lead. So that there won't be any lack of motivation this Saturday. Kansas, I do worry about the letdown factor. Obviously, if the Jayhawks didn't win last week, no way that they're ranked in the top 25 now. While I did like them plus the points at home against Oklahoma, I certainly do not think this is one of the 25 best teams in the country. I just don't. And it's an interesting scenario with an unranked team, a short favorite at home against a ranked opponent. Historically, it's been profitable to back the unranked home fave in this spot. I had a great run in college basketball. Same thing with that in February and March of last year. Last 2 times here on the gridiron, we saw an unranked home favorite against a top 25 team. UCLA beat Washington State. Kentucky clobbered Florida. So I like the spot for Iowa State. A rare favorite play for me this week, Joe. Just want to make sure you're paying attention, as I know you always are when I'm speaking on the show. But Iowa State -2.5 is your best bet.
completely missed that. But okay, no problem. We're gonna go on to Adam Trigger.
I'll email it to
He's
you.
going to Ames. I get it. I know Iowa State, kind of hard not to like him in this spot here. But Trig, how about you, man? You said you had two best bets really for the show, interchangeable. So talk to me about Ohio State and Rutgers, the other half of this duo.
Yeah, Joe, I love this time of year because we're getting toward the end of October. You get some data, you figure out what's working, what's not. And for me, what's working has been two things. One, focusing on certain conferences like the MAC, and two, focusing on these big underdogs. I've had a lot of success with these 18 to 20-point dogs, like over 2 touchdown underdogs this year. Hit one over the weekend with East Carolina. Twitter let me know how lucky I was there, but you know what? It was still a win, so I don't care. And I'm looking at one here that could be another big dog that gets the money in Rutgers. I don't know if this will make it, to my client card at the current number, because it did take some money right off the rip, and I obviously missed the best of it at like 20. But I certainly, wouldn't put you off looking at Rutgers in this game. Scarlet Knights have been phenomenal against the spread. They're 6-1-1 against the number this year, and I've got to admit I was wrong about this team initially. I came on WagerTalk TV at the those first couple weeks. I said this offense wasn't going to be very good. Had no idea how Rutgers was going to generate any points or any offense, but they've done enough. It hasn't really mattered because their defense has been outstanding, and they've made enough plays to be 6-2 at this point in the season, and they're winning games, which is really all that matters. The two losses were what I consider to be good losses comparative to the number. They were good in those games. They lose 31-7 to Michigan. That was the push, unless you got 24.5, and then you would have covered that as well. And they lose 24-13 at Wisconsin. Two road games, obviously going to be tough, tough asks for Rutgers, and they covered the 12.5 in that game, against the Badgers. So here you got, you have Ohio State, which is, their defense has been outstanding. They haven't allowed more than 17 points in a game this season, which is crazy. But the offense isn't that good, and we saw that last week. Against Wisconsin. They kind of snuck by 24-10. It was either a push or you would have covered Wisconsin with Wisconsin, depending on what number you got. And I feel like that's probably how this one's going to play out. The total is extremely low. It's like 42, and you could make a case for the under as well, in the respect that Rutgers is probably going to need to win this game with their defense. But I like sort of the dynamic that comes into play here. Rutgers comes off a bye. I think that extra week to prepare, figure out how to slow down an Ohio State offense that really hasn't been that great this year will really help a very good Rutgers defensive team. And then, it's going to be like about Rutgers being able to make a couple plays. But again, we're talking about a pretty big number here, Joe. 18.5, 19, still some places. I think Rutgers defense is probably good enough to keep them within this number, similar to the way some other, of the quote unquote lesser Big Ten teams have done to Ohio State this year. And, it just, if they can make a play or two, I think they could be right in this game. So I do like the Scarlet Knights. I think that number is probably too big. And, I'll call this something like a 16-point Ohio State win. The offense is still just too much of a work in progress. I just don't think that they're worthy of laying that number right now. And then, with the extra time to prepare for Rutgers, I think the Scarlet Knights are going to have a good game plan here that keeps them in a low-scoring game, and they should get the money.
All right, good stuff there. Ohio State, Rutgers. Ohio State might be a little overvalued as usual here, says Trig, but opportunities certainly presenting themselves, not just with the Maction games, but how about a big ACC game coming up with Steve Merrill going to talk about this? I don't know. Are they overrated anymore? Are they not Louisville? What do we do with them? They're laying 9.5 against quietly Virginia Tech, having a pretty good season in the ACC. So what are you going to do with this one here, Merrill?
Yeah, I mean, Louisville quietly having a pretty good season as well. I bet a bunch of people don't realize they're ranked top 15 now. They're actually the 15th team in both the AP and coaches poll after climbing 3 spots. They're the second highest ranked ACC team after just Florida State, who's undefeated at 4th right now. So really good season for Louisville. And I was surprised to see this line drop from 10.5 down to 9.5 early in the week. My database simulation, 10,000 games simulated, has Louisville on average winning by 13 points in this game. So I do think we get some line value, especially now that it's below that key number of 10 at -9.5. And yes, Virginia Tech got off to a slow start. I had a best bet with them in a week one, big revenge spot against an overrated Old Dominion team. They proceeded to go 0-3 straight up in ATS after that. They have gone 3-1 straight up, a perfect 4-0 against the spread their last 4 games. But that's another reason why I think this line is too cheap. And this is a big step up in class for them after just beating Wake Forest and Syracuse at home. Last time Virginia Tech traveled was back at the beginning of October, and they lost by 22 at Florida State. And the time before that, in late September, they lost outright at both Marshall and Rutgers. So they have yet to win on the road this season, and they have not performed well on the road any of those games, in my opinion. So I think this is a big step up in class. Louisville remains an underrated team. They just shut out Duke 23-0. You would assume that star quarterback Riley Leonard didn't play. Well, wrong. He played the majority of the game, and he threw terribly, but his ankle injury didn't seem to bother him because he was actually scrambling and running early on. So I think that's how good this Louisville defense is that they shut down a solid quarterback, and they are a very good offensive team. 5 yards a carry, 9 yards per pass, and I just don't know if Virginia Tech has enough firepower to catch up when they get behind by double digits. I think Louisville has plenty of incentive to continue to win by margin, and they should be able to win this one by double digits. So we'll lay the 9.5 with Louisville as a free play for this Saturday afternoon at 3:30 Eastern on ACC Network. And don't forget, my personal best bets are available every day at WagerTalk.com. You can get the rest of November and all of December, the rest of 2023 for just over $7 a day with an all sports, all access package. That includes not only my college football, my red hot NFL, but my number one ranked NBA. Enter this week now, enter this Tuesday on a 3-1 start this season, only lost by half a point, and now 79-49, up 30 net games since January 1st this calendar year in the NBA. Plus what's left of the World Series, and college basketball starts in less than 1 week. Next Monday, there's like 100+ games. Not a bad time to try to an all sports, all access for just over $7 a day. Steve Merrill, WagerTalk.com.
Can't go wrong. A lot of different ways to kick off this Week 10 action in college football on a profitable note. But it starts, of course, by heading over to WagerTalk.com. Take advantage of this one-day only customer appreciation opportunity. Best bets across the board. $2 over at WagerTalk.com. And I do believe Adam Trigger has a 5% best bet up and available in college football you may want to take a look at as well. That'll do it for us here today, but we're just getting started. If you go ahead, click on that video on the screen right now, and that'll give you access to all of our content when it comes to college football. All the big game previews and best bets across the board are just a click away. Best of luck with your plays here today. We'll talk to you again tomorrow here on the College Football Kickoff Show.